Hello and welcome to the ADHD Artist Podcast, where we explore and celebrate the lives of artists with ADHD. Listen to interviews with all different types of artists with ADHD, where we talk about life, art, superpowers, and... Wait, what was I saying? Hosted by Sarah Guys, your fellow ADHD artist. Thanks for joining. Hello, everyone. Happy July. This episode was actually supposed to come out in June, so you can tell where my life's at right now. I hope y'all are having a great summer. I'll tell you what, this transition back to millions of projects and parties and hangouts and theater stuff and all the things is exhausting. And I'm very grateful and also very overwhelmed, and I'm guessing that I'm not the only one right now. So be sure to give yourself some grace, because even though it's exciting, it's a lot of stimulation. So you're doing great. Speaking of theater, I wanted to make an announcement real quick. My theater company, Interrobang Theater Project in Chicago, has a virtual fundraiser that just launched, and it'll be live until July 19th. If you're looking to support live theater, this is a company that I'm really passionate about. And also, we have a ridiculous amount of auction items this year, and a lot of them are really cool. So please help take some of those off our hands. Also, we're raffling off a hangout with Gillian Anderson. So if you're a Gillian Anderson fan, that'd be cool to check out. I think the raffle tickets are like $20, which is ridiculous. Since it's virtual, you don't have to be in Chicago to participate, and I'd appreciate it if you'd check it out as we transition back to in-person stuff. You can find the details at interrobangtheaterproject.org, and you can find the silent auction and a couple other cool things about the fundraiser at givegrove.com/support ITP 21, and the 21 is the number 21. So check it out. Okay, I know I'm talking a lot this episode, but here's one last word from one of our sponsors before we move on to our amazing guest. If you are a visual artist looking for inspiration, Paper Demon is a free online role-playing game designed to help artists get motivated to create. Draw your original character visiting their fantastical worlds and be rewarded with ability points, XP, and loot. Learn more at www.paperdemon.com/ADHDartistpod. Again, that's www.paperdemon.com/ADHDartistpod.
So don't go drown in your sorrow. Just hold on tight till tomorrow. Ice cuts pain at the plate go, 'cause you're mine, you can escape. Oh, get used to it. The triggers, the relapse, the self-hate. Your heart rate keeps on peaking. Keep breathing.
That was a clip from a song written by Dani Bagel, who is my guest for today. And we'll talk about this in the episode, but she wrote that song to help herself get through a panic attack, and I thought that was really cool. So, Dani Bagel. Dani is a Cape Town, South Africa-based classically trained musician and executive producer, also a former physio, or physical therapist in the States. Audiences were first introduced to her sound a few years ago with her features on several singles, including Keegan John Moore's Lay It On Tonight, under the alias Gabrielle with the Cartel. In 2017, however, she released the first single as Dani Bagel, Where Did We Go Wrong? Since then, her collaborations include Libo Lukewarm, Swimming Practice, Omar Morto, Cruise Control, and Gina Jeans, Smoke and Mirrors, co-written with Jimmy Nevis. In 2020, she released her debut solo project, Magic in Her Hair, an EP that is unapologetically made on her own terms and produced by her own label. She describes this project as both an offering to audiences and a dare directed at herself, rooted in genuine passion and joy. For more information and interview requests, please contact admin@danibagel.co.za. Her latest single, called Testing, can be streamed. go to linkfire/DaniBagel-testing. I really hope you enjoy the interview. I had so much fun with Dani. And stay tuned for the end of the episode, where we'll play a full version of Azul, which you heard just a few minutes ago. Enjoy! All right, I am here with Dani Bagel. Dani, thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad we made this happen.
Thank you for having me. We finally, yeah, I think I've last replied to your email last year, and then that's how we work.
Right? It feels very on brand, right, for both of us. It's just like, oh yeah, we'll do it later. And but I'm so glad that we finally get to meet, sort of in person.
I mean, this is as good as it's gotten for anybody in the last year. So
that's exactly right. Yeah. So I love to start these chats with just asking if you've had any noticeably ADHD moments in the past day or so.
Oh, so this morning at breakfast, I actually had to let my boyfriend know that just being around his family for the first time in a couple of years and a new environment was overstimulating to me. And then having breakfast, choosing breakfast was kind of hard. I took too long. Yeah, because it was a 3-egg omelet with a list of options. And then I think it was just because backstory, we're here for a funeral. Sorry, I get weird around days.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. And you're in a beautiful beach cottage, which is...
Yeah, we're looking at the ocean that I'm seeing. I don't think I've ever seen from this view in my life. I've seen a lot of crazy things, but we feel like we're right on top of it. There's a little bit of a jungle strip between us and the deck, and it's just people surfing and barrel waves. I feel like I'm at a zen retreat.
Wow. That's amazing. So of course, you've got other things on your mind than breakfast.
Yeah. And also the climate's different. So I actually said to him because I've been in my house a lot for the last 27 months, essentially been working from home. Going to a different town for the first time has just been my senses are a little bit fried in a nice way and a bad way, because he was we're talking and reflecting on what happened in the last 2 days, and I looked at him and I'm I really want to pay attention to what you're saying, but nothing's landing.
Nothing's landing. Yep, I know that feeling. So can you tell me when you were diagnosed with ADHD?
So I was diagnosed on paper at 31, but part of my job at the time was interacting with medical professionals.
Yeah.
And the issue is while we were spreading a lot of awareness in education, and I'm in the healthcare industry, and I was this story seems very similar to mine. And in that time, adult ADHD got put onto our formal South African psychiatry guidelines, because up till I think 2017, 2018, it wasn't really recognized as a diagnosis. And then that will cascade what your private medical aid will allow for you to get, treatment covered on your plan. Or so since they've had those types of shifts through conversations between scientists or doctors and industry and blah, 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 and that whole system, you're able to get now 13 psychology, psychiatric sessions as a prescribed minimum benefit for your medical aid. So it's that's how I kind of got into being it's not going to cost me in my pocket. I can afford the shortfall if I need to, because I was at a stage, and if the medication, so it was I needed to be ready to control it. So I'm glad I kind of made it at 31, but my whole life, I think there was just this awareness and external feedback that you're very different. And that difference only really landed when I started to see the pockets and how my brain, because I started to learn about my brain and how those different systems work, so your prefrontal cortex and your dopamine and noradrenaline and melatonin.
Right.
You become a lot less obsessive about what you're doing wrong, and just so much faster at getting the system right for you, because the system that you're living in doesn't fit you. and you're smart enough to know that I'm failing at it. Why? It's so simple.
Right. And that's so interesting coming from your background, where you know a lot of the the science behind it. You are coming in with all this knowledge and then saying oh, I see it written out. I'm telling psychiatrists about this and I recognize it in myself. What was that like?
It was hard because I felt I was in this weird ethical gray area of knowing too much about my condition that I became very picky about who my specialist would be. So it was an interesting experience, because when I finally met my psych, I knew out of all the ones that I'd met, like who I wanted to, and like who I would trust and who I like their personality style, and then I think accelerated my process of my therapy, because I got there and I sat down on the couch and I'm like, I'm going to just high jump over everything and this is where we are. and she was like, okay. And it was nice.
Let me save you some time.
and also, like, in my work, I was learning for the first time, because I was a physio. I spent a lot of one-on-one time, and then I started seeing my therapist and learning about like mental health. I was kind of like had this depressive dysthymia, because I was like, am I depressed? She's like, not entirely, you're still pitching up at work. And I'm like, yeah, but like I'm just like, I don't know where my red zone is. Red zone is it's like a 1 and a 0. And what I've noticed as I've gotten older and as I've gotten better at meeting depression, because there's such a huge overlap. So this is something that I learned, like, which was really quite fascinating, is that with ADHD in adults, because there's so little support in your formative years, and as you're developing social skills and as you're developing your little transferable skills between individuals, with yourself, with the systems you're signing up for, there isn't a lot of structure. And then by the time you get to adulthood, where you're entirely responsible for yourself in very mundane things, you have you've got a bag of tools, and it's like, one's like a whisk, and the other's like the one end of like a vacuum cleaner, and then you got a piece of sellotape, and you're like, I can do something with this, but it's like, there could be a more refined approach. So now I had like this really interesting conversation with a psychiatrist, and I asked him, what do you think the function of like failing and depression and those like knock-ons alongside comorbid diseases? And he said it teaches you like a level of empathy for yourself which you'll never reach, and then also go back and like really sharpen your tools, so that now when you get to this dip, you won't necessarily avoid the dip, but you also know like what your path is, because you can maybe use like an ice pick this time instead of like a high heel to rock climb.
Yeah, that's so, I love that you say that, because I talk a lot about like having a toolkit, but what's in the toolkit, right? What kinds of things?
Nonsense.
It's
so odd.
Yeah, and we really like, I mean, I always talk about how it's like throwing a bucket of mud on the wall and you just like see what sticks, and so it feels like you're just walking around throwing things in your toolkit like that you have around the house, like, oh, maybe this will be helpful later, and then it sounds like like the diagnosis and some of these medical tools, like working with a psychiatrist and what you're talking about, is helpful to refine the actual tools that you're putting into your tool belt.
Because sometimes you don't need them all the time, every time. And that's also something that I learned. Because like this is the other, like the negative of ADHD is just like, when something works, you just like, I'm going to be the best at this. And also I'm like a Virgo. And so it's like this weird intersection of like obsessive perfection, and then I become like hyper detailed, and that's when I get into my like nice little theta brainwaves, and I'm just like enjoying things. And it's like, Dani, you've been there for 4 hours, you need to get up.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah, the hyper focus. So can you tell me a little bit about making music?
Okay, so my dad was in a jazz band and a musician. He's of Indian descent. And so my family's got like quite an interesting history, but also like music is like a very integral thread to that on both my mom's side and my dad's, right? So my mom is from Cape Town. And I don't know if you know a lot about like race relations in South Africa, but we've got this race called colored, which is essentially when Americans hear they're like, you can't say that word, but that is
that's actually used there. Wow.
It is actually a descension of like a mix of East Asian slaves, because when they colonized South Africa, there was a treaty between the local people and the colonizers said, we're not going to colonize you, we're going to bring another slaves from the rest of it. So they brought in from India. That's why Durban has like a very high population. And then you'll see like a lot of Cape Townian Muslim community, which is your Cape Malaysian community. And then between that and the Khoisan, which were like the raw word we will say is like Bushmen, which is like a lot of people see like in caves, right? Where they've got the paintings and blah, blah, blah. That's like a derogatory term, by the way. It just felt like weird to say.
It's fascinating.
And so then through, I mean, essentially we can probably call it like rape and pillaging as colonization brings. You have this mixture of the settlers and the local people, and then that became like blurred. So there's a lot of generations. It's only like 2 or 3 generations back in like our local coastal communities, because of the slavery, that they actually don't know where the family's history goes beyond. Because when you came off the ship in October, they gave everybody in that ship like the October surname, right? So there's a lot of Novembers and Augustus and Septembers, because like everybody just like shipped them in. So it's quite like this weird dynamic. So fast forward, my great grandfather, my mom's side, and my grandfather, my dad's side, they were at a hotel and touring band from Cape Town, and something had messed up with the booking of the hotel. So my grandfather, my dad's dad, said, don't worry, just bring yourself and your whole band. You guys seem really cool to our house, which was like quite a big deal because they were Indian and my grandfather was like Dutch colored, like, and in Durban, and just the part that like you just wouldn't associate with that, or it was also illegal for people of like different races and cultures to integrate. Anyway, take them into like the hood of Chatsworth, which is like a very pretty much like locations of generations of people that were brought there essentially. And 5-piece band, 2-bedroom duplex house. He's got 6 kids. And then ever since then, it was like the 60s that they just became friends, and they would like holiday at each other's houses. So my parents knew each other since they were kids. And so my mom's dad also plays in like a band in the 60s. So music's like always been part of my thing. And by the time I was about 4 or 5, I learned for Elise on my mom's piano. So my grandfather bought it for mom. And so she was like the white and the black and the white and the black and the skip one and the skip one and the skip one and the that. And then you go dee 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 dee. And I did that for about a month. And then like, okay, you need to learn the next part because clearly like you're gonna drive it's crazy. And I use the next one. And they were like, hold on, this kid is like actually picking it up quite a lot faster than we thought. Because my dad would always play guitar and their friends would always be musicians, and I used to go with them to like jazz clubs and watch him gig, and my mom was a dancer, and it was like this very weird, like I look back at my life and like it's a little bit ridiculous, like you have like a 2-3-year-old that's like running following the disco ball while these people like dancing. But I was there like watching my dad's shows kind of thing. And so when I started music formally, I did like classical music. So John Thompson is like the ABCs. And my dad had a friend who was a trumpeter, and he taught me the basics because his mom was a piano teacher. And then by the time I eventually got accepted into my grade school's formal music program, they wanted to stop me at the beginning. And I was like, I've already done this, ma'am. And they're like, what do you mean? So I think I was in like grade 3, but I'd been working probably from about grade 1 privately at home. And then they were like, what do you mean? This like 9-year-old, how do you learn this? You know? And I was just like, here's the song.
Yeah, I got this.
And they were like, okay. And then had a really good like orchestra, also music. We do Eisteddfods, which are like formal, curriculum, and then like different schools compete. It's almost like it's the decathlon, it's finals.
Yeah,
you gotta make it to regionals.
Amazing.
And so I do like choir, and then and also I think when I was in like grade 9, I had a really terrible math teacher, which completely ruined math for me. So I used to like run away to the music room and like bunk school, and then also all through high school I just like bunk all my peers' classes because I'd already done so much of this stuff when I was like very, very young. Because I just said to my teacher, I'm like, just throw it at me, I want to just like furiously consume it. And that now looking back, everybody's like, wow, this is a prodigy, bravo. And I was like hyper focused, playing for 4 hours, 5 hours a day.
I have a name for that. That's great.
I see it now, but I think I just instinctively as a child, like because I was so much, I was always told like you were a lot of baby, just like very busy, and if you weren't drawing, you were doing something, so I just used to get like shouted a lot for doing like drawing on the wall. So then when I'd play piano, people would be like, wow, that's great. So I kind of used to redirect my feedback to more positive feedback, so I wasn't getting scolded for like just doing nonsense as my curious mind would. So so that's kind of always just been the thing. So when I got into university, I had already finished like my royal schools. I think I was like 16, and then when I applied to university, my first choice was physiotherapy because there were only like 55 people that they accept. And then BMAs in jazz because I was like, I finished all my classical grades. Let me go learn about jazz. It doesn't make sense in my brain. Like it's a bit like all over the place. I preferred like Bach at the time because it was very structured. And then I went to Debussy, and Debussy was like, oh, impressionist era. This is very emotional. It's like 9/8 timing. What is this? What's awkward? So I started finding like a little bit more comfort and because I relied so much and like being kept in time, because like I always just want to like show you how quickly I could play it, and my teachers would be like, no, you actually need to let it sing, and that's why there's direction in the Italian phrasing and all this stuff. And then so I got into physio because I was just like, I'm either going to become a medical professional. If I suck, I can just go be like this pianist around the world. You don't need like a degree in that. And then the other way around. And so the irony is that I left physio because I didn't have enough time for music. I mean, like, I think still in my soul, like I'm an empath and I'm a healer and I'm like all these things, that because I wanted to be a physio since I was very young as well. Before I even knew how varsity works, I wanted to do a double major. I was like 10 years old and just like, oh, I'm going to do double major in physio and music. And until someone's like, they're completely different campuses. And I was like, why are you ruining my dreams? Like,
why would you tell me that I'm 10?
Why was that 10? You know what I'm saying? Because and it just never left me. And I think I just always looked at physiotherapy to be something that would allow me to like connect with people around the world, which it did and it has. And it's afforded me to like travel and meet people from like so many different stages of their life. Like I meet people when they're giving birth and when they're dying and when they've had the worst accident and when they post-op and when so you have like this very like unique perspective of connecting with people in very different emotional states that they would probably never reach in their life again as well. Wow. And so I think like through all those experiences, when I left being a physio, purely because I just like was so disconnected from my emotional self, I was very in my left brain a lot because you're responsible for someone's treatment plan. That when I went into like a corporate space, I was like, okay, cool, I can take a sick day and still get a salary. That's like pretty cool. Whereas before I never took leave. I worked every public holiday. I would over accommodate people that could just maybe was speaking through a pain body more than like a physical injury, which I also was learning how to navigate because I was like only 26, 27 at the time. And then now when I'm in corporate, the irony is that like that feels so easy because I've got so much of the structure around me and not through me, that when I close my laptop, the rest of my mind is just for me to play with. So I've really been blessed with over the years, and as I've matured and as I've become like a lot more empathic towards myself and the type of people that are good for me, because I notice like I'm a very high achiever and and my psychologist says I'm a workaholic, which like, I mean, I feel like it's a little bit of a drag, but I guess like it's just, like, madam, it's a Tuesday, like just come on. But I have to actually be like more honest with how my environment influences me. So a lot of my friends are purposefully creators that I find inspiring and that I find challenging and that I find offer me a very different perspective of how I've looked at things. And then because of my classical music, I never really saw myself as a singer because I was of the era that a good singer meant Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston. And I've got like a very like small voice, and I like singing in a choir because like I get shy, and like that's when you're so social. What I know now is social anxiety. I'm like, don't look at me, I'll be in the corner and I'll be amazing. But the minute you give me attention, I'm like, ah! You know, like all of that just like recoils in on itself, and I'm not when I'm not self-conscious, you know. So that music has only really started like flourishing as I started to be able to really take control of how self-judgmental and like how bad my feedback is or what I consider before I try. And I've just become like a lot more, I've owned the fact that I'm okay with being a little impulsive, just like, this song's fine, just throw it at it, or like let's just change it and like start it again. And I just be a lot more like disconnected because it's not a representation of me, not an ego work. So with all of those things, you one day reflect on a couch and then go on like a deep dive, and then you trigger yourself in an anxiety attack, and then you start like trying to do your grounding work, and then you start finding a rhythm in your pulse, and it's like, that's a cool beat. And then you're like, there's a word coming through, there's a phrase coming through, and then you go sit at the piano, and then you start writing the phrase, and you're like, okay, my psychologist says I must breathe, so keep breathing. And I literally wrote a song through an anxiety attack that the phrase, I wrote it to myself, where it's called Azul, where it's about diving into water. Water's a very powerful force in life. It brings life, it nourishes, it gives life, it can take life. And as I was diving in my pool of memories and all my reflections, I went too deep and I didn't come up for air. And then that's when like I felt like this very like suffocating experience. And I was kind of like dissociating a little bit and getting like all that tingly stuff. And that became like scary because I'd never really dealt there. I was just like left with my mind for a long time, like quite intensely. Sure. But I went there on purpose, and it just was like a little bit more than what I think I was prepared for. And what was quite interesting is that when I was done, I was like, wow, that was a trigger. That was like a real trigger. And like part of the verse I wrote to myself is like, you have to get used to it. The relapse, the triggers, the sulfates. I can relate. My heart keeps on peaking. Just breathe, keep breathing, keep breathing. And that's like just to help bring you down, just kind of de-escalate your nervous system. And now I kind of start looking at music of influencing body physiology. I start reaching like different sound frequencies of like the heart frequency, and I go for like sound meditation, and I listen to the crown chakra sound and that key, and that now becomes like a new puzzle of like Legos of how music's like grown with my mind, which is quite fun. So now we just so to answer what type of music I make, I don't know yet. I just whenever I make something, it's from a completely different tangent. It's either I'm writing to what the song requires, or it's a completely organic thing that's like something's out of me and I just need to vocalize it in that way. And because I talk a lot, obviously, I mean, God, I probably haven't taken a breath. But I found that people don't tell me to shut up when I'm singing, so I don't feel so bad.
Yes. And it's so funny. Like I feel like I'm getting emotional just like hearing you talk about this, because so many artists that I know, they experience burnout a lot. There's a lot of burnout, and you describing like sitting on the couch making music through a panic attack, and
it's the only way I could come back down. It was weird. And now the problem is that that's become like a really cool way of me writing songs. The second one happened, and then afterwards I was like, Dani, we need to like change this approach.
You're like, wait, I can't just write music when I have a panic attack. Okay.
Yeah. And it's just like, I don't know, when I see like Kanye West, what is so bizarre, I'll never forget that the first time I saw Kanye have like a manic tweet thread, and I commented on it, and someone's like, you gotta be careful about it. I'm like, I'm not trying to diagnose a person, but I'm like, I know a manic episode when you're going like really grandiose with what you want to put forward and like what you want to execute, because I'm like you put like a diamond and then you pull the lever on the jukebox and it just starts shooting tickets out of you. If you've had one of those, like,
oh my gosh,
and it pours out like, and I find as I've become like a little bit more spiritual, because I grew up Catholic, which was like a very rigid, very wild. We did the rosary in the funeral, and like it was the first time I actually, with this version of my brain, been able to hear what like prayer sounds like, and that just sounded like very mystical. I was like, wow, I didn't know sounded kind of powerful.
Yeah.
And it's something that I've heard my whole life, but I've just I interpret and I connect, and words have a completely different effect because I changed my language to myself. I changed how I speak to others. I changed what I used to be like very sassy and very impulsive with like tweeting. I love Twitter because it's just like it's the streets of like wit, and you know, you give one, you get one, and then you're like, good one, sir. And then you close it off, you know. And now it's just become like so overly apologetic and just trying to it doesn't have that much of that safe playness, and I've got that playfulness where I really like people challenging me.
How do you feel like your ADHD actually affects your art, or do you feel like ADHD affects the art that you make?
I think my ADHD allows me to tap into my uniqueness, because it's like I always see it as like looking through the kaleidoscope, and it's like you know how to fine tune, how to make a very specific shaping, even though it's like completely haphazard, and when you dip in you don't really know what you're going to pull out. But I will say the comorbidities that you inherently live with when you have adult ADHD, being whether it's like substance abuse or sleeping disorder or eating or your depression, anxiety overlap, they correlate either with yourself or in those around you, because studies show that adult ADHD tend to hang around people with ADHD or other mental afflictions, just because you have that inherent understanding of like, don't worry, I don't have to explain too much. I know it too. Okay.
Yeah.
And the problem is that you just become like, it becomes like a little bit chaotic because nobody really has a plan that everybody can or should or be able to trust, because how do we know any one of us has thought it all the way through and in the right order?
And we don't, but but we're okay.
But we always get there. I know I've got like 10 things on my list, but like the list is like 1, 7, 14, 32, B, octopus. So what I find is like when I'm anxious, it switches off my creative center. And I think my anxiety, I've come to learn, is like my ego and my external conversation with myself and like that self-judgment. And the antidote to that is like self-forgiveness. And then you kind of settle back into your heart space where like you kind of have a balance between your intuition, your throat, which is like what you're going to speak with your boundaries, and your openness and your truth. And you can say things that are challenging. You can say things that are with tension, but there's never malice and no intention to hurt another. And like, I truly, truly, truly like want to guide myself through those things, right? So when I'm anxious, I can't find forgiveness as quickly as I'd want to be snappy because things need to be so perfect because my environment feels so out of control, and then it creates an internal chaos, and then I just become even more exasperated in my need to just anchor, because nothing makes sense to make space for me and how I just need like a little bit of accommodation with. I've become a lot more aware of my environmental stimulus, and because I'm so tuned with sound, wow, I mean, my relationship with how sound affects my mind and my memory, my emotions, and what I want to create or connect to within myself and my art. I actually found out that a large portion of like the depressive episode that I had during COVID was because I wasn't in my car driving, listening to albums anymore. And how it was influencing my mind of like, when I listen to music, I'm listening with shape and I go back and I go play it. So there wasn't that like cause and effect happening anymore. And that's how, when I'm only in my left brain, I burn that out, because it's incredibly finite. It's based in logic. Whereas like I access my right brain, it's your source of inspiration, it's your source of creativity, it's a source of like understanding your inherent experience, and also being able to tell the story through others just with so much conviction or so much like creativity that it's like, this is my story. How did you know my life? Like I've got this one song that is a couple of years old, and people are like, oh my God, tell me, what is it about? Who is it about? And I'm like, I didn't write that song. It was given to me. And I was like, it's so beautiful. It connects. And that's the type of art I want it to be, is that no matter what I do, I wanted to make you laugh. I wanted to make you think. I wanted to be like, oh, I didn't know that you can do it like that. So like, people find themselves like very confused. I love causing confusion in people, because like, even though I look like completely haphazard, I'm just like, I just make it look really what I call it, it's like the French show magic.
I love that.
So I found like the burnout has definitely been something that has kind of also been part of the ADHD, because you have a lot of intensity and not a lot of structure. So I found that as an ADHD person, I need to have and create a lot of external structure, whether it is how my music gets filed and labeled, and I'm not going to be the person that's going to handle my booking, because I will never get paid, because I'm like, you know what, I had such a great time, and the idea of writing an email to send you the invoice, I would rather just mop the ocean floor. You will never see an invoice from me, and then you just like essentially lose money. Like if it's just me, it's fine, but like if I'm like managing a whole 14-man team one day when it's a sponsored gig, like people are going to want to eat, and they like don't even send email. I'm like, I promise I want to. I just haven't.
Oh my gosh, that's brilliant too, to be like, okay, you are good at this thing, and I know that you need to eat.
I shouldn't be.
I know that I can't do that. I may not be able to. So
how much will it cost me? It's my new phrase. How much will it cost me to get it done? And the beauty of COVID is that it's forced people to become a lot more innovative in how we connect. And the fact that now you can have $1 service from someone in like Nepal that is really good at this, and the exchange rate means that they're getting paid in dollars, or we service our fees out to, different things. And it's just like, you actually don't need to have them in your room and be like, I can't put my team together, because it's just like you break it up into little components, which I'm really apparently very good at, like pulling things apart. And that is my ADHD mind of seeing all of that. And then I just kind of declutter it and go like, okay, now you go be an artist when you want to be like your emotional self. It needs to like put out in words, and people need to now listen to this for 3.5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, so I ask this question every interview, and we've kind of already covered some of it, but I just kind of want to ask it and see what comes up for you. What does it feel like to make art?
I think it depends on my art medium. So I sculpt, And that for me is a very tactile thing. I like drawing, but I draw a lot of naked bodies. And I think I tap into, again, like my balance of science and art, where I draw anatomy and postures and emotions like that. So I sometimes it's a very tactile thing that is what like the reward experience is.
Yeah.
For when I'm making music, I've actually started creating music not from like I'm making a beat or I'm writing a lyric, I'm writing a melody. I'm like, I don't really sing as much as what I feel I can hear in my head. Like you can hear I'm quite husky, so I don't actually have a very like high soprano pop girl voice. I'm actually like a little bit in the Amy Winehouse was like one of the first. I was like 14 when I first heard it, and I was like, wow, you can actually like sound like that and people don't mind. You don't have to, because like Jessica Simpson and or Corinne Bailey Rae and like Adele's first album. And I was just like listening. Oh, Diana Krall was another like influence from my dad. And she was a white jazz pianist with a completely alto voice. And I was like, what? You're like the lead in the band. And like, I just started breaking my mind about what a woman and femininity in very masculine spaces are. And then it started like deconstructing all those things, because now I enter spaces with music with friends through the process of learning, through the process of wanting to create together. I'm like, I like your sound, I like my sound. When we put things, let's make something that completely takes us away where we want to be, because that's the point of playing. We don't play enough as adults. And I find like that is like connecting with your inner child. And with my music, I really find that my classical training and just the way I've built my relationship with it, and how it's given me a sense of confidence that like I can't say that there's any other girl that I know of in the music space that like has a very strong classical, structured formal training, and then using that in pop music, in jazz, and in African music. We're making piano, which is like in the like townships and in like pubs and stuff, and I'm creating like harmonies that I always sang by myself, but I didn't have the confidence to sing out loud. So when I started producing music, or actually just my voice, I learned how to switch into like an executive producer role. So I don't really make beats. I'll add piano and chords, but my sounds, I will want to listen to like Jacob Collier and have like a fire of me, and then Kanye West, and listen to how he mixes different voices and how they penetrate through the sound and how they move through your headphones. And that's the type of art I want to make. Like either you can listen and press play and be like, that's Bach. And then you come back and then you go, hold on. There was another layer. We're going back. And then you come back and you're like, oh wait, there was a section part that there was like a little bit of a choir and it sounded a little bit like pop rocks in your ears. And that's like the type of like, if you like to go and dig for things and be like obsessed, like that's what I want to make. I want something to be found every single time you come to it, because I find that in my own music and my own art. So the tagline is I make music for myself and I just like sharing it with people. I like making music. I like making art. I've given more art than like away than I've sold art, or sculptures or paintings. And it's because it's just, I give it to you from a place of love, and I'd rather just let you have it, and that's the same way I feel about songs, because it's just part of like, if you want to play with me in this now audible space, then by all means, like press play.
Well, speaking of that, do you have any projects coming up that we can support?
Yeah, so we released my first single of my EP a couple of months ago, and we shot a music video, which is pretty much, it's really cute. It was shot in like the premier queer drag club in Cape Town, and now it's actually closed down and they've gone and moved to another location. So it was the last time something was held there. Oh, wow. And so I've got people that's kind of like for the first time during the pandemic, like meeting, and it's always like the outcast of society, and we're there in like feather boas and nipple caps and harnesses and just being fun. And it's called Testing. So that single's been out, but my EP that I'm going to release is called Magic in a Hair. The next single is a song called Close with a producer called Cool Drink. So he's just part of a song that's like a couple of million views on YouTube. I think within a month they had like 1 million or 2 million or something crazy. And the girl that he wrote the song for actually got signed. So it's like it's so amazing to see like the level of access art and music and artists within South Africa can access, So that song is a bit of a dark horse. Like it's I'm a piano, which is he's like the pioneer of that sound, but my voice on it sounds nothing like we've ever heard like commercially, because it's traditionally like a more black sound, and I'm an Indian colored mixed girl that's got a classical training background that started singing jazz. It's like, what am I doing here? But it's so fun. Like, we just have so many voices, and it's layered, and it's rich, and it's so obnoxious, and I love it. So when that's out, I'll have the EP Magic in a Hair. Oh, so this is long story.
Yeah.
Okay, last story. It's called Magic in a Hair. There are 5 or 6 tracks, and each track is a different genre, because my hair is a different like embodiment of my different interests than myself. So when my hair's curly, it's like, how is my personality different versus when it's like a very straight, a very like blown out, or in a long sleek pony, you just kind of like move different. So that's what each song will have, a completely different genre. There's one song called Stavy Bitch, which is a colloquial term where it's about someone that's like very like bougie, and so Stavy is like someone that keeps to yourself. And I wrote that from the perspective of being like misunderstood, because I was so anxious. I used to just like sit alone, but people would be like, oh, you're the pretty girl that's got like hair and your eyes look like Indian, and so you think you're cool. And they would like literally tell that. And also my accent sounds different because I went to a Model C school, and that's like a whole other conversation of developing as like the only brown kid amongst a bunch of white kids, and how that changed my taste. Because like Alanis Morissette was someone I was obsessed with at the age of like 9 or 10, listening to Jagged Little Pill on a Walkman, that I got from somewhere else.
That was also the thing that I blasted in my car. She's got that. And to jump in, I have nodules, and I've been a singer, but I have like nodules on my vocal cords, and it was kind of a genetic thing. But so I've always had a really raspy voice. And so like you, when I started hearing these women that had raspy voices and were altos and, were belting, I was like, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. And I can do that.
That I can do that. I'm not just stalking and trying to do a runway. It's just like, that's not what and that I think has just been like a metaphor as I've become a lot more comfortable with singing. In my final year at first school, I'll never forget this. It was like, it's straight out of High School Musical. So the one, it's called the Matric Extravaganza, which is like the matriculants are your seniors. Okay. So before we have like between our big send off, like the big matric dance, they had this extravaganza where people just do skits and they're modeling it. It's a cringe face to like feed like teenage egos, but we get it. So we decided to do an Ava Cassidy. I don't know if you know her, but she's like the most certified. So Ava Cassidy, Ain't No Sunshine. And my dad taught me the guitar progression onto play a piano, and those chords were just like so complicated, like well beyond. Like I still don't understand what it is, but I could play it and copy it. And then my friend was the singer, and then I had a guy that was the guitarist, and we came out there and like I came with like a martini glass, and it was all just lots of set the scene, play that song. And then at the audition, I was decided, okay, like I was practicing Evanescence, My Immortal.
Amazing.
And then they were like, anybody else? And I was like, I've got a song prepared. And then I did, and everybody's like, when did you sing? I'm like, I don't really, but I just wanted to play this. And then that became like the first time I sang. Like, no, I'm lying, I probably sang when I was very young, but I hated it so much that I just like stuck in. But this was the first time where I think like I played piano and got to be able to use my distractibility to focus on what I know I'm good at, that like I don't have to notice that she's watching me sing and that's making me nervous. It's going to take me away from. So I kind of like start like using hyper focus, like touch control. You bring it in at certain moments, and that's become where I really like started to enjoy playing with my ADHD, where I'm not just at the mercy of it, where I'm like, I really want to go straight, and it's like, yes, but we're going to go at 42 degrees to the left. Like, there's a ditch.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So what is the question? That is so funny. My EP. Yeah. So EP, I've got like very weird eclectic influences throughout my life, and I think because I enjoy like Foo Fighters and Coldplay and like those really gritty sounds, and then I'm also like the kid that was listening to Pink and Christina Aguilera, and now I'm obsessed with Ariana Grande, and like I love pop, and now my next thing I really want to do is like start. I don't know if I've been able to like write a song about like a political thing. I really thought hard, and because like what I'm finding myself observe is very difficult just to compute, because it's so close to what generations in my family have experienced and displacement, and how my parents were just like illegal for a couple of years and had to get permits to be married and permits to live in the same house. And there weren't a lot of kids of my mix because that just was against the law. So you were very isolated. And like, I feel like there's a story to tell there for like when I see kids that are like traumatized through, you know, systemic oppression and stuff. I think there's a lot of beautiful art there because there's always growth, no matter what, like things are always temporary. And there's also healing through that. And they're not really, I look at it, I'm like, how can I help? And if it's in my mind, I'm like, is there a song that can bring comfort, a song that can bring like, then maybe that's just going to be like my donation to the cause, you know, because the system's too big for me by myself, but I can do.
And I keep hearing you say like art as healing, music as healing, and that very much feels like that, you know, like something that could help is like, you know, there's so many issues out there that we're like, oh, I just want to help, or maybe I don't have the money to contribute, maybe I don't have the time to put in, but like, here's my offering, you know,
as small as it may be. And what I appreciate now is like, back in the day, my dad would say that they would wait like a few months before an LP would land after being released in the States. And he would be like waiting at his post box. And now it's just like Billie Eilish is like already. And I'm just like, of every little thing that just like ungrazed. And I'm like, what's the next
song? So what advice would you have for an artist with ADHD who might be struggling?
I think with art, you have to not believe the lie that you can separate the art from the artist. And it's going to sound so stupid when I say it, but it's the absolute truth. But like your brain and your mind controls like every single thing. It's a memory bank of lifetimes of your soul through different planes. It's a lifetime of generations and traumas that it like carries and heals and repeats. It's an assimilation of your environment in every single thing you've ever interacted with, even on like a subconscious level. It's stored there, right?
Yeah.
So you have to, if you want to be serious about yourself, and if you want to really develop a good relationship with your creativity, where you can actually have it like a faucet where you just open it, and sometimes it's a little stream and you just want to have a sip, and then sometimes it's a full gush and you want to have a bath and languish in it and have bubbles. Like there's different ways, but you can't, like, you know, when you try and wash a spoon, if you hold it the wrong way, it like hits you in the face. So you can't keep making that mistake every time, because the faucet is the thing that you need to access, like water. It goes back to that thing of, it's a nourishing thing, right? So I think what helps you is like, if you find you are struggling, for me, in my individualized tool, I would say use that as a trigger that you are a little bit disconnected from yourself, because you are potentially trying to over subscribe to something that is inherently not designed for you to work well at, because that's just not how your brain is. So step one is just acknowledge how often you meet that system, right? Because what you might be finding as burnout is that you're actually spending a large part of your conscious day just engaging in tools and systems and processes that don't trigger that dopaminergic release that you actually find to give you a sense of reward and a sense of accomplishment in completing a task. Because that, for me, when I get through something, I'm just like, wow, I can do anything and I can do it again. Do you want me to see it do it faster next time? Like, that's what I inherently, that's my core, you know? Yeah. And that's, that also goes back into like decades and decades and years of like deep, you know, rejection, and people like will give you bad feedback when you get it wrong, and you always the person get it wrong, and they will always be the one to let you know and be like, oh, there's Dani being a Dani thing again. I'm just trying myself, okay? I mean, the one time I will never forget, for a work thing, my boyfriend dropped me off at 5 o'clock in the morning. We were starting at 6, and as we got out the car, I'm like, hey, but can you get the bag out the back? And he goes, what bag? And I'm like, I thought you. And he's like, I thought you. And we could have had a fight about that.
Yeah.
But I was just like, send it to me, we'll figure it out. And then he got it on like a freight train. It was like an extra $200, whatever, it's fine. But in that moment, that was our ADHD, because it was early and we were anxious and we were going to miss each other. And it's all of those types of things that you were balancing. And did we need to use that as an opportunity to be like, why are you always like this? Because he knew that he felt bad, because that's normally his thing. And I'm like, he's like, you never let me be a gentleman, because I'm always too quick to like open my own door. So it was at that moment that I was like, I'm actually going to be a lady and let my man take my bag. And then that is the day that we... And the worst part was that when I got to the conference and I was with all my colleagues, they were like, oh, why are you traveling so light? I'm like, I don't want to tell you the story. I did. And then it just became like for the next 2-3 days, everybody's like, wow, Dan, like that's, yeah, you know, it's your thing. And I was just like, oh, this is so stupid. Can we just not make a big deal about it? Because it's like, you don't feel shy as an adult. I'm a grown ass woman and I'm being triggered because that's all I'm facing is that I'm being triggered as like my 6-year-old self of like, where did you leave your blazer? How can you forget your school bag? Where is your lunchbox? Danny, your glasses are on your face. This is your 3rd pair in 4 years.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, my stomach hurts just hearing those because I know this. I know this feeling.
And it's just, I spent so many years being so self-aware and just hating myself for the wrong reasons. Instead of being able to say to my mother, hey, all these things that you celebrate and like you've got all my certificates posted up, guess what? It comes from the same brain that doesn't make sense about picking the damn clothes off the floor, even though you've told me 14 times. Like I want to. But now I'm working as a 35-year-old woman with a degree. I got through varsity, I got through college. I can pay for services. Now I can have my housekeeper and I'm teaching her how to do like cooking. And so we're going to do healthy foods. And everyone's like, it's a little ridiculous that she's coming over 2-3 times. The 3rd time in the week is to make sure that I have a meal, that we prepared our groceries. Did we top up on like something as stupid as like toothpaste, you know? Yeah. But like, and I said, it's a bit of a joke because I feel like I need a nanny. But the problem is that when I don't have somebody to take care of that, I get to the end of my workday because that's my priority and that's paying my bills and causing me anxiety. And then when I come up for air, the shops are closed and I don't want to order takeout. And then my partner feels like he has to take on more and I don't need him because I want to be a productive. So I'm like, let me just add to that system. I know what that system works. I'll ensure it works and, you know, that kind of thing. And when you're struggling, just look at your environment, look at yourself, look at if you need to be okay with taking on the things that you need to change because something is impacting your behavior, whether it's a person, whether it's a little exercise that you do, whether it's just kind of being in denial of how long you've been struggling at something that you know is pretty simple. I think you need to become a lot more honest with yourself from a place of love and self-forgiveness, that when you are needing to be hard, you're not speaking to yourself through your parents' voice of, why aren't you more like your brother? You're at the psychiatrist, it's costing us so much money and it's not working. And you just
that's like... just so you know, that's going to be the sample right there for this interview. It's beautiful.
But that's the voice. It's even got that frequency of it being like a little gnat in your ear. But and that's the thing is when you're struggling, it's just that's your sign that you need to get better at noticing when you're in the red zone, because you can't only function there. It's not when you're your best. The people that love you are not seeing the best parts of you. You're not performing at a level that you know is worth your potential and being able to give you that positive feedback that makes you pitch up to things. It's like, I want to be good at great things, but I also know I need to get through and accept like the mundane things as part of it.
Right.
Or I need to speak up about the system not really functioning. So now we're in the space where companies are being forced to be a little bit more accommodating of like that neurodiverse spectrum. They're finding that autism has a really, really fantastic space where you need people to be sticklers for numbers and processes and getting things on time, because I am not that guy. This is what they must I am not that guy. And you're not gonna give me my review of like Dani was bad at that, because I'm like, I told you I'm bad at this. Why are you giving me a 0 on it? Let's just not mark that section and replace it with a part that we both get to agree on, something that I can work towards, or something that you can reinforce of when I take that into another space, I feel valuable because it makes me want to give more, you know, and I can give from a place of genuine abundance. And when I give, it fills me instead of just depletes, because I'm trying to accommodate and self-regulate, and my people are, and then I'm snappy at home, and then I forgot to eat, and then I'm not eating good meals, and then I'm not exercising, and it's fighting, and it's fighting, and it's fighting.
For real.
It's part of it. It's part of it. It's part of the struggle. It's not a struggle. I think we must get out of the mindset that it's a diagnosis. I think the diagnosis only just allows to make sense of, we meet our minds and we just like, where did that come from? You know, it's just like this. I really find like we might be a little bit more in tune with like those slightly higher frequencies, whether it's on this plane. I don't know enough about the stuff yet, but there's just like this inherent level of connectivity that an average person that's a 0 on the scale, that's like not a standard deviation from the norm, is just so blunt with. They don't access that. And I embrace it, and I say, wow, I'm so grateful. Like I'm so I'm so excited by all the options instead of overwhelmed.
Yeah. Wow. Dani, I could keep talking to you forever, to be honest. Like, we could keep going. But, I think this is plenty for people to chew on. So I just want to thank you so, so much for coming on and chatting with me.
Thank you for having me. It's so nice. Like, I find when I was really going into wanting to take control, like I said, you become like really obsessed. And then I listen to every podcast. I became like my own ADHD expert. And I really like these kinds of talks because there's so many of us that just want to feel normal. I'm a normal person. I have a cat. Okay, look, Mike, if you see my Instagram, you'll see my cats in the glasses and jerseys, but that's because I spend a lot of time alone. I'm trying to like humanize. But yeah, so I think like, thank you for having a platform of just normalizing this. I think we don't need to hate ourselves for being different and just rather just lean into, those things that make us quirky, because it's just, there's so much color in the world and you're able to see a spectrum that other people just like would never be able to integrate. So
exactly.
More.
Amazing. Well, take care. Please stay in touch and we'll talk soon.
Sure. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Delve deeper than the surface. Does it really serve us? The thing about water, the ability to guide, to shape, provide, challenge, change, give life shape, give life, give life. So don't go drown in your sorrow, just hold on tight till tomorrow. Ice cuts pain at the plate go, 'cause your mind you can escape. Oh, get used to it. The triggers, the relapse, the self-hate, your heart rate keeps on peaking. Keep breathing, it keeps on peaking. Keep breathing. Ooh. Your head's above water. Ooh. Keep breathing. You are your mind's commander. Ooh. Keep breathing. Just float the tides going under. Ooh. Keep breathing. Just let your mind peacefully wander. Keep breathing. Keep on breathing.
That was Azul by Dani Bagel, and you can find more of her work on Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, YouTube Music, and iTunes. And that's it for today for the ADHD Artist Podcast. This podcast was produced by me, Sarah Guise. Original music composed by Christopher Aaron Narr. You can find more of his work at www.christopheraaronnar.com. Narr is spelled Knarr. Podcast artwork by Joseph Ramsky. For any inquiries, you can contact him directly at jramski3@gmail.com. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to hit subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also follow us on Instagram at the ADHD Artist Pod.